So welcome back to Almost Above Average. This is Chris McIntyre. It is currently 1:15 in the morning on a fine Monday morning. And I was laying in bed and I couldn't sleep, and I was just kind of reflecting on the podcast over the last year. We started this in, I believe it was September or October of 2023. And I remember when it first started, my very first guest was author Felicia Covington. And she had just written a book called Unforeseen Consequences. And, when I was getting into the podcasting thing, a lot of the podcasts that I listened to, they always had authors and actors and people like that. So that was one of my first things. I was like, all right, I know an author. Let's get her on the podcast and we'll talk about the book. And I was super scared and super nervous. I was so nervous, in fact, that when we recorded the first episode, and her story was riveting, and it had a lot of emotion in it and a lot of really, really hard things to hear in her story. And I remember when we recorded it the first time, we got to the hour mark, and she was just getting into the tough part of her story, and she was crying. It was a very emotional time while we were going through it. And I looked at the recording and it wasn't recording, hadn't recorded anything. And we had already been podcasting for an hour. And I was like, oh my gosh, I felt so bad. It was a good learning lesson. Make sure you're recording, make sure the mic's on too. I've had a slew of technical difficulties, but we got through it. And when we were done with that, I let her know that I didn't record it, and she was very gracious. So Felicia, if you listen to this, thank you very much. It was an absolute honor to have you as my first guest on Almost Above Average. And we did a lot since then. You, me, and Country McRae and M&M Publications, we put together a book signing event for your book and a few other books from M&M Publications. And that was such a fun process. It was such a scary process. It was one of those things where it was challenging me. It was one of those things I don't know if I can actually do that. What do we have to do? We have to find a place. We have to get permission. We have to get stuff. We have to organize. It was a lot of steps. I mean, we documented the whole thing on the podcast, but it was just what an experience, for a couple people, recovering alcoholics at that, to come together, find an event, get people to show up. I was able to play music at it. It ended up being a successful book signing event, and, to a place at the table. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to do that. The podcast, we're working a lot this year in the men's mental health arena, just trying to be a voice to give permission to men that it's okay to be vulnerable. In fact, I would recommend that you try to be vulnerable, just on the off chance that you're accidentally bottling things up inside. That seems to be one of the biggest killers of men, is just stress, bottling up stress. And it seems like it's affecting so many people. We had a friend back home, Adam Ginsberg, rest in peace. He was scheduled to be on the podcast, and the day we were set to record, I found out that he committed suicide. So that kind of kicked off a lot of the mental health discussions that we've been having with Black Silk and AJ Johnson. But we're just three dudes, and Dr. Joe Shepard has been a part of this as well. We're just a couple guys. I mean, I don't know how to give anyone professional advice on their mental health. I just know the things that I have done that didn't work, and I want to share those. So maybe if I can share the bad lessons that I've learned, if we can collectively share all the crappy lessons we've learned, maybe we can shortcut that for other men out there. And then another problem, I don't know about problem, but something to solve, is how do we get this message to men that actually need it? I think we've discussed a lot on the podcast how, once men are already going down a path that they're depressed and they're starting to isolate and they're shutting things out, it's almost too late. So I think where we're at right now is the intervention needs to take place before the fall off the cliff. So that's going to involve really paying attention to those around you, really paying attention to the loved ones around you, and it's not discounting women at all. Mental health is universal. We're doing it around men's mental health because we're men and we have that perspective, but not at all to take women out of the mental health arena. I respect women to no end. I understand they also go through struggles, but those struggles are different. So what I'm really hoping to do is that this podcast ends up being a permission structure. And really, I hope, I've been trying to get listeners to respond with, stories of hope things that they've went through. Tell me your struggle story. Send an email to mcmedia.network.llc@gmail.com and we'll read it on the air. You can keep it anonymous. We'll keep it anonymous. Like, it's never to make fun of, or not fun, but we just want to address the issue. And the only way we're going to address actual issues is if someone presents them to us, because without that, it ends up being, the four of us on different podcast episodes solving our own problems, admittedly, which is great. But I think, I know there's so many people out there. I know there's a lot of men out there struggling. Just send an anonymous story to that email address and let's just have a discussion around it. Let's say you're going through something that you can't quite figure it out. Send that story in an email. Let four other people take a stab at it and give you some ideas. That'll at least, open your eyes to other possibilities. I think that's the only way we're going to be able to get actual help to people who actually need it. And I'm sure there'll be other methods and processes that we develop along the way to get men the proper help that they need. But, I was just kind of reflecting on the year, and I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish. There's been a lot of ups and downs. I had a studio at one time for a while. That was great. But almost above average McMedia network, it's all funded by me. So I also have to work until I can get this stuff sustaining, myself and my family. I got a big family. I got, 4 kids, 3 grandkids. Got my father-in-law living in the house with us, which is great. But, there's a lot of, it's tough. But the content needs to be recorded and it needs to be put out there. I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I've had my struggles with mental health, with suicide in particular, alcoholism, all of those things. So it is really personal to me. I remember how it was when I was going through that. And I don't want, if I can take that away from anyone, let me be that guy. God, let me be that guy. Let me take that away from you. But yeah, that being said, so some other stuff that's coming up on the podcast that I do want to talk about is I was picking up my son the other day from school, and he was showing me some content on Instagram. And he's like, Dad, check this out. This is the mayor of our town, Apex. And I was like, oh yeah, he had some cool, engaging content, and I'm a content creator, so that's eye-catching to me. So I kind of scanned through his Instagram, and I'm like, that's pretty cool, and I thought it was really cool that my 15-year-old was showing me, like, you're following politicians? What's going on with you? Like, aren't you listening to Babytron and freaking whatever else he's doing? But anyway, so, I was just looking at it, didn't really think nothing of it. And then I kind of thought about it later, especially with this men's mental health content that we're making right now. I was just like, maybe I could try to build a local audience, because the way the podcast is structured right now, it says we're doing stuff on men's mental health, and then Dr. Joe and I are doing stuff just around men's issues in general, and then in between those we have interviews with special guests, nonprofit leaders, people at the top of their field, people with just a story of overcoming something, just powerful stories in between the men's mental health stuff. So the layouts, it's ever evolving, but that is the theme that it has been for the last couple of months. It's men's mental health, men's issues, and then just interviews with interesting people who have stories that I've heard that I would like to share with my audience. That's kind of how it's laid out right now. And I sent the mayor a message on Instagram, and after I sent it, for some reason it disappeared, and so I didn't think nothing of it. In the morning I was like, maybe I'll try him on Facebook. So I sent him a long Facebook Messenger post. It was just, basically, my name is Chris McIntyre. I own McMedia Network, blah, blah, blah. My son showed me to you. But I had this thought, I'm trying to build a local audience here in Raleigh, because my media company's also we're going to roll this out officially soon, but we have a bunch of content packages that small businesses can use. And we have a couple other websites that drive the marketing for those. So we got a whole system set up. We're about ready to launch it. So you guys will see it on the podcast for sure as it comes up. But anyway, so that was kind of the reason I reached out to the mayor. It's like, yeah, let me get a local perspective. It is my city. Yeah, tell me what's going on in my city. Tell me your story. I'd love to know, what's the latest and greatest news going on in Apex, North Carolina. So I sent him all that, and he replied back, a few hours later. He's like, please forward your contact information. We'll give you a call about next steps and stuff. So cool. And then I'm in here yesterday just doing my clips for my podcasts, and I get a phone call. I didn't check it. I just answered it, and it was the mayor. And it was super cool. I got super nervous immediately. I was just excited that he called.
Yo, what up? This is Little Dice Rutabaga on the mic.
You know what separates the champions from the rest? It's not just about the will to win, it's about the will to prepare. I'm not just doing pull-ups, I'm pushing limits. Every rep is a reminder that I'm capable of more than I thought possible. That's why I chose Bucked Up. Their supplements give me the edge I need to take my workouts to the next level. From pre-workouts to recovery, they've got everything I need to stay on top of my game. With Bucked Up, I get the energy, focus, and endurance to crush every session. Whether you're a pro or just starting out, their products will help you achieve your fitness goals faster. Ready to unlock your full potential? Visit buckedup.com and use code McMedia1 at checkout for exclusive savings available only to my followers.
Back, like you reach out to elected officials all the time. Well, maybe you don't, but I just didn't think he would respond. There's no reason to. I'm just a guy. But then again, maybe that says a lot about him as a leader. Like, yeah, one of my constituents is reaching out to me directly. So either way, that's a good look. So, we talked a little bit. I kind of gave him the rundown about what happened with the podcast, why the podcast is, who I am, what my story is. And, the reason for the podcast is because a story saved my life when I was trying to quit drinking. I heard somebody tell my story in a room one day, and he described me to a T, and it blew my mind because I'm like, there's no way that you're living the exact same life that I am. There's no way. And the power in that moment that I felt so connected to this other person. I've never seen him before, and I'll probably never see him again. He was in this room one time with me, and I honestly don't even remember what he said. I just know that everything he said was exactly what I was going through. And he was a little further than me. He had a couple years sober. I was brand new, but I just remember making that connection to the story, and he was behind me, so I didn't even see him. I was just kind of sitting there like, there's no way. It was just weird. So, and as soon as I connected with that, my walls came down, and I was like, maybe it left a little bit of room for me to just ponder for a second. Like, maybe I can do this stuff. Like, look at all these people. They're not drinking, and they're just, they're just telling stories. And I just found a ton of power in that. And so now I'm in a situation where I need that now. That's almost become an addiction. So I make sure I hear stories about alcoholics weekly, all the time. Just it helps me. And in those conversations, I'm usually able to help as well. Like, I have experience in that. This is what I did. It didn't work. Or this is what I did. It did work. But it's a collaborative type of thing. So that was kind of my pitch to the mayor. I'd love to get you on the podcast, hear your story. Let's talk about what's going on in Raleigh or Apex. What's local, what's going on locally. What are the plans for the future in this community? I did want to touch on the national politics for a minute, just to see where he's at with that. And then, yeah, that was pretty much, what I had planned for the podcast. And then this is crazy how God works in my life. So even I was an atheist before I got sober. I'll be sober for 4 years on the 27th if I make it, God willing. But I was an atheist before this. And I would aggressively argue with you about how God didn't exist. That was how angry I was. But during this process, how I came to believe in God was coincidences. So that story, that guy that told my story in that meeting, to me at that time, that was a coincidence, but it was so much more powerful at the time. I now view that as God, but at the time I called that a coincidence. It was like, there's no way, we're both in the same room and he's going through the exact same shit that I am. There's no way. That's just a coincidence. That was how life was, but enough of those happened, like a crazy amount, to where there's no denying it anymore. It's like something else is doing this. There's no way that people are discussing what's in my head every other time I'm here. These weird coincidences would keep happening, or weird parallels that would be exactly what I was feeling or what I was thinking. Just too many of those happen, not just inside recovery, but as soon as I started recovering, my vision cleared up a little bit. 2 years for me to start thinking clearly. And I remember it wasn't like a moment. I just remembered after 2 years, I'm like, oh my God, Like, it kind of gave me anxiety because now I have all this time and I have all this energy, and I didn't know what to do with it at the time. I didn't know what I was going to do with it back then. Now I figured it out. I'm just going to, never stop moving until I go to sleep at night. And that seems to work out. Try to schedule my day from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to sleep with, gym, work, and then media. I'm trying to build 2 companies. So there's not enough time in the day. So my main focus now is I'm trying to do roofing during the day. I'll do media at night, and then the weekends will be a mix of both. But anyway, that's besides the point. For the mayor, so I kind of, I got through explaining, my story, why the podcast, why the media company. And then he kind of stopped me and he's like, well, I want to tell you about an event that he's doing in, I want to say it's May. I'll have to get the date from him again. But I think it was called the 1,000 Man March, or it's 1,000 Man something. But the concept, just briefly what I grabbed from the conversation is, we want to get 1,000 men to show up and to do a march to bring awareness to men's mental health. That blew my mind. So that's a coincidence, right? He doesn't know me. He doesn't know what I'm doing in the podcast arena right now. We've been focusing heavily on men's mental health for the last couple of months, and then me personally for the entire 4 years. There's parts of my mental health story in every podcast that I'm on over the last 4, since I started this. So he's planning this event, and we're kind of, talking about how to collaborate with it. Like, I want to make a big event, a big video out of it. I want to make a big to-do about this, because we were talking about doing that. We were making plans to do something similar. And I think my plan when we first discussed it was basically that same thing. It wasn't a march. It was like kind of like the book signing event that we did for Felicia and Country last year, where, we get a place, and the idea was I'll get psychiatrists and pastors and AA and NA representatives to donate their time to come to this event. And what I see at this event is that we have food, maybe food trucks, food vendors. We have music. I'm a musician. I'll play at these things. I would love that. And a lot of my music is related to mental health. And so what our plan is basically the same thing. Is we have food, we have professionals donating their time, and we have a little bit of entertainment. But the point is to get people talking about it. So hopefully we attract people of all kinds and people that happen to be going through something. We have an area like booths set up where you can go have a private conversation with a pastor or a AA representative or a psychiatrist. They'll donate their time, and then another part of that idea is because they're going to come situations where, they're getting free volunteer care, but they're going to need aftercare that's going to require money. And some people don't have that. They don't have insurance. They don't have means to access that. So my thought for that is there's got to be a way to set up a nonprofit to fund something like that, or even like a GoFundMe, or we could find, there's a way to fund it. Especially since I've been doing the podcasting, I keep coming in contact with people who have little pieces of this puzzle already put together. Like I have a place to go for all these things that I think we might be able to do. I just don't have the concept fully formed yet. That's besides the point. The reason I even say that is because it blew my mind that he was already planning that event when we first talked, and we kind of started making plans around that. So that can't be a coincidence. That's what I call God. How do 2 complete strangers end up connecting over? It's got to be a really big issue to him if he's doing a big event like that. It is the biggest issue for me. How do we randomly link up? And we don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what it's going to be. I just know I'm going to put all my effort into making it as best as I can. What does that mean? I don't know. I'll get as many of people that I know to come out. 1,000 men. We need 1,000 men. I think I can do that, but I don't know. I still don't know. And a lot of what I'm operating on now is faith, is pure faith. I have this belief that if I just do the next right thing, that everything will work out. So I tried to stick to that. I don't always nail it, but if I can remember that and put enough good decisions together, eventually, I think something great will happen. But yeah, I just I had a lot on my mind, that's why I was laying in bed wide awake. So I was like, man, maybe I'll make a YouTube video / solo podcast episode of Almost Above Average with Chris McIntyre, featuring Chris McIntyre with special guest Chris McIntyre. I'll deliver a real hard-hitting interview, Chris McIntyre interviewing Chris McIntyre about the life and times of Chris McIntyre. Sounds like I'm narcissistic, or I'm just tired at 2 a.m. Give me a break, y'all. Did you guys subscribe yet? Please do that. I don't know where you're listening to or viewing this on, but wherever that is, please subscribe. You know, we're trying to reach, I want to grow this thing. And it's not, maybe part of it is selfish. I mean, there is part of me that wants this to sustain my life so I can focus on it. You know, right now I have to focus on money, make the money, make sure bills are paid, and then make sure I have enough to be able to do this, because this is what I'm passionate about. Not making videos, not podcasting, but being a light. I spent so many years just not doing great things. A lot of things I'm not proud of. Not being the person that I was raised to be. My parents didn't raise the man that I turned out to be before I quit drinking. You know, they raised what they thought should have been a good, normal kid. But that just wasn't the case for me. And so I think a lot of it is just I have so much guilt for all the stuff that I've done in the past that I want to put as much positivity and light into the world that I can to try to maybe black out the red on that ledger. Maybe that's part of it. I'm sure it is, now that I said it out loud. But either way, I want to be viewed as someone that's trying to help instead of someone that's always taking. So please hit the like button. Please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with everyone. Share it with everyone. And then if you're seeing the clips from this on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn or TikTok, I'm going to try to direct all traffic to the YouTube channel. I'm going to try this funnel strategy everybody keeps talking about. So I'll be putting links on all the shorts to the full videos going to YouTube. And then, like I said earlier, in order to help, this needs to be an interactive conversation. And in order for it to be an interactive conversation, we need to talk to men who have been affected by mental health. Maybe not even talk to you. We want to hear your experience so we can try to work it out in our head, so we can talk about it and have a conversation about it and try to find solutions. Our strategy right now is the solution is in showing up and having the conversation and creating the space for other men. And I hope we're doing that. And if you have any feedback for us on how we can do that better, please send that in the letter on McMedia.network.llc@gmail.com. You know, just give us some feedback on the show. It's kind of a scary thing when you take on a topic like that and then you make it a theme of your podcast. It's like, well, do I want to be depressed all the time? Like, no. Do I want to be around depressed people all the time? Yeah, I do. Because I know what it feels like to be like that. And if I feel like I can not fix it, but I feel like I can help, at least in the moment. I can be a distraction and I can be someone to listen to in that situation. So, you know, please just send in your stories. We can even coordinate a thing we've been talking about, just having random men on the podcast and just having roundtable discussions around it and just bringing new people in every time. There's a billion different strategies to how people are dealing with depression. Another thing I was thinking of this morning before I recorded this video was, I forgot. Did I mention it was 2 a.m? Did you subscribe yet? Well, hit the like button. Come on. But anyway, and then lastly, let me say this. I am truly grateful for all of you guys that listen. I know a lot of you are my friends and know me personally. I still appreciate that a lot. You know, this is a weird thing, deciding to be a content creator. You know, that wasn't how we grew up. But that being said, I super appreciate all the support and all the new followers that keep coming in. It's been overwhelming. It's been wonderful. It's been funny to see some comments. But yeah, keep them coming. Keep them coming. Subscribe to the podcast. It's on Spotify. It's on everything. But if you can, get to the YouTube channel and subscribe there. That's where the majority of all the content's going to be. I think the strategy going forward is going to be a lot of clips. I might even separate Almost Above Average from the media page and have that be its own thing. But we'll make decisions like that later. But yeah, if you made it through the solo episode, I commend you and I thank you very much. Thanks for listening to the tired musings of a sleepy podcaster at 1:46 a.m. on March 10th, 2005. This is Chris McIntyre for Almost Above Average. See you guys.